Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us again for another webinar Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. It's a little past noon. We were supposed to start this at 12 o'clock, but I got caught up in some training sessions. Under New York law, we have to be trained to make sure none of our 30 people sexually harass, discriminate, or otherwise treat our other teammates poorly. I am blessed to have Alex Naray as an interviewee today. He is a lawyer in Switzerland, and we're going to be talking about what sellers need to know to sell in Europe. So Alex, if you can, please introduce yourself, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you came to work in this e-commerce marketplace.
Yes, hi CJ, thanks for inviting me. So I'm a lawyer in Switzerland since 10 years. I worked for different firms, smaller firms, bigger firms. I have a specialization in tax law and corporate law. But in addition to that, I'm also an Amazon seller. So I have been selling for approximately 5 years using mostly FBA. So I have this double experience of knowing the law, knowing some tax matters, and being an Amazon practitioner by selling and knowing what are the issues that sellers face.
I got to tell you, I don't know if that's good or bad, because I know law school isn't the best, isn't a lot of fun. There's a lot of issues selling on Amazon, although there's great opportunities. And everybody hates taxes. So you have like the trifecta of pain in your career.
Yeah,
okay, I want to get right into the substance here, because Amazon sellers are in Q3. Q4 is going to be here in the blink of an eye. And we always recommend to sellers that they diversify, get into other markets, UK, all over Europe, Australia. So can you describe for Amazon sellers who are not yet selling in Europe, how can they access the European Amazon marketplaces?
Yeah, so what we have noticed that there are a lot of sellers selling in the US, which is a very good market with a lot of buyers, a lot of consumers, but it's a market which is very competitive, and there are like huge opportunities to sell in the European Union. But most people are afraid because of legal issues, how to create a legal structure in Europe. Of course, the language issue, because there's so many languages spoken there. And the last one, maybe, which is the most important, which is VAT issues. So it can be very challenging for someone who is used to sell in the US, used to sell in Europe, and to comply with all these rules. But this is also good news, because since it is complicated and difficult, it gives access to a market where you can have like a lot of products where you will be the only seller, and it's a huge opportunity. So it is difficult to get in, but once you're in, I would say you can have a huge opportunity to sell.
You know, I know the opportunities are tremendous. The UK is a tremendously large market. Germany is a tremendous marketplace. Mm-hmm. Spain and France are a little bit smaller, but there's still a tremendous number of consumers. And the consumers' tastes are very similar to the US in terms of products and brands. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And what, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I had a little too much coffee this morning, so I cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's just that there are a lot of services. There are some companies who help you with VAT issues. There are other companies or lawyers that help you with company creation. Other that might help you with Amazon, but like no one is really giving a service altogether, like helping you with the VAT issues, corporate issues, and even logistics issues.
Well, let's talk about that first. It's certainly out of the order of the outline that the two of us discussed. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about setting up an entity and setting up the ability to pay the VAT taxes in Europe. How do you help sellers do that?
So there is one strategy which is quite well known, which is setting up a UK company, which is not so difficult. But until a couple of months ago, you could just set up a UK company and sell with it. But today, it is compulsory to have a VAT number. If you don't have a VAT number in the UK, Amazon will stop your account and prevent you selling things from the UK. So one thing we usually do is either set up a UK company or do something else, which is a bit more creative and different, is setting up a Swiss company. because we are based in Switzerland, which is the heart of Europe. What is funny about Switzerland, it's in the middle of Europe, but not part of the European Union. But this allows to create some interesting things, like having a corporate structure from Switzerland. With the reputation of Switzerland, Switzerland is very well known for its credibility, reliability, for its banks. So, and of course, it's a country which is a neighboring country of Germany, France, Italy, which are part of the biggest Amazon marketplaces. And these are the things we do. So UK company, Swiss company, or even both of them. Something that is interesting and I like is to create, like, for example, a UK company, then establish a branch in Switzerland, because it's much cheaper to establish a branch compared to a subsidiary. And once you have that, you can have like a VAT number in the UK, VAT number in Switzerland if you're interested in selling in a Swiss market. And then from Switzerland, you can also obtain a VAT number from all the neighboring countries. And of course, you can also use Switzerland for your warehouse, to send your stock to Switzerland, so you're close to the neighboring countries. And this can be also done by using like free trade zones, where you can import goods to Switzerland without paying customs.
Let me break it down a bit. So we're covering a lot of ground. I want to really make it simple. We have a lot of sellers who are relatively new, and we also have a lot of sellers who are very, very advanced, and everything in between. So let's break it down a little bit. How does a U.S. citizen, or a citizen any place outside the EU, set up a corporation, within the UK or anywhere in the EU other than Switzerland? And we're going to touch upon that. I also want to talk about Switzerland's famous privacy in banking. Okay, but let's start with the simple, then we'll get more complex. How does a U.S. seller set up an entity in the UK?
So they have to provide, of course, basic information like the passport, place of residence, and things like that. And because they do not live in England, they will have to have a nominee. So it's someone who is paid for being the director of the company, who will appear in the commercial registry of the UK. And these are services that we can find, or we can do it for you. We're also working with partners who do that, who are reliable. We used to work with them. And basically, it can be done very quickly. In setting up a UK company from scratch without advice is not so expensive, but we prefer like to help people before, because if you don't set it up correctly, you might face troubles later on. So
let's hold on. What would be the cost for it to be set up properly? With someone like you helping them out, what would it cost a U.S. seller to set up an entity in the UK and to obtain the VAT number?
So the price, it will depend, of course, of the case, but basically we can start from $3,000 to set up a company with legal advice and even tax advice. But before that, we offer something on our website, eCommerceLawyer.com, which is like an assessment, which costs only $500, where we can already give a summary of how to set up the structure, the tax situation, and how to manage also the logistics, where to set up the warehouse, to have a system which is tax optimized, customs optimized, and legally optimized.
What's that website again? eCommerce Lawyer?
eCommerceLawyer.com.
Let me make sure everyone gets that. So if you're interested in setting up an entity, or I guess, let me take a step back. If you are interested in having the assessment as to what entity, if any, and what country might be best, you can reach out to Alex at this website, and he will do an analysis for you to see whether you should or should not set up an entity. And I'm a big proponent of setting up entities because they protect you from liability. And also then what country to set up in, because there are different benefits and ramifications. One of the ramifications, if you have both a UK company and a Swiss company, is you're going to have multiple tax returns. One of the benefits of a Swiss company is their banking secrecy. So Alex, why don't you describe what's the difference in the process and the cost and the time between setting up an entity in, let's say, the UK versus setting up an entity in Switzerland?
Yeah, I like the Swiss entity because, as I said before, it has a very good reputation worldwide, and it means that you can do in your advertisement, you can say in your advertisement that you are like a Swiss-made company, you have the Swiss quality, Swiss reliability, and if you look on Google or on marketing statistics website, or branding, country branding, Switzerland has one of the highest reputation worldwide. So this is very important. Second is so it's centered globally close to any country where you want to sell. And I like something about Switzerland is we heard a lot of scary stories like in France, Italy, UK. When tax authorities began to look in your matters, ask questions, or even knock at your door and I don't know, take all your computers. So these are things that happen. Having a company in Switzerland is like kind of not a protection, but I would say like tax authorities in Switzerland are very business friendly, meaning that you can,
Historically, I mean, also historically, the Swiss authorities have allowed banking privacy. It's always been more business oriented. Also, I got to tell you, there's been a ton of news reported about anti-Semitism being on the rise, particularly in France. So on a personal level, it's not something that I really want to support in any fashion. So if I were to set up an entity, I probably would avoid that country. I might go to the UK or I might go to Switzerland instead. Also, our sellers know tax returns on the U.S. It's a self-reporting system. So while my advice as a lawyer is always to report every single nickel and do everything properly, Switzerland still has certain banking secrecy laws, doesn't it?
yes, it has, but it's not as before. So you cannot open a bank account and put $1 million on it and say it never exists. So today, Swiss banks signed a lot of agreements with the European Union, with all of the OECD countries, meaning that they have to automatically exchange information with other countries. So if American resident opens a bank account in Switzerland, unfortunately, Swiss banks will send information to the US authorities. And it's the same for French, English citizens. So anyway, so we cannot really rely on bank secrecy unless you are a Swiss resident. So if anyone is interested in becoming a Swiss resident, there will be the few people benefiting from the banking secrecy, meaning that if you are a Swiss resident, and let's say you have a lot of money in your bank account, the tax authorities cannot ask the bank to give this information. So the bank cannot provide information about your bank accounts if you're a Swiss resident. It's otherwise it's a criminal offense.
All right. How does the VAT work? Whether you have a VAT number or VAT number, either in Switzerland or the UK or any place else, how does the VAT actually work in terms of a US seller getting their products into Europe and doing business and selling through Amazon?
Yeah, so VAT can be a mess. It's something that the European Union tried to harmonize to make it easy. To make it global and same everywhere, but it's totally a mess because there is VAT in every European country. However, they have some discrepancies, so different rates, different thresholds. So basically, when you create your English company or Swiss company, you have to register at VAT in the UK to be able to sell in the UK. Then, if you want to sell with a pan-European program, meaning like when Amazon dispatches your product from one warehouse to the warehouse of other Amazon marketplaces, then in theory, you have to have a VAT number in each country from where your stock is dispatched. So if you subscribe to the Pan-Amazon, Pan-European program, you have to have a VAT number in each of the countries. So it's basically UK, Germany, Spain, Italy.
Can you help domestic sellers obtain all those different VAT numbers or VAT numbers?
Yes, of course, of course. So it's not so difficult to have a VAT number. What we have to set up is what we call VAT representative. So what's interesting here is that you don't need to set up a new company in these countries, nor a subsidiary, nor a branch. You just have to nominate someone who will be your VAT representative, and he will receive all the letters from the tax authorities, and they will provide you the VAT number, and they will file your VAT returns. However, you have to do the VAT returns yourself, so you will have to fill all these big Excel files with all the Amazon data, basically what you sold where. But of course, we can assist with that and make it right and make it easy for you.
Now, my understanding was that either the UK or all close Europe, that when you would bring products in, you had to give some type of deposit in advance to cover taxes. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right. So when you bring your stock to a country, you have to pay VAT in advance. So this can be a problem with cash flow. Sometimes you have to pay in advance tens of thousands of VAT even before you made your first sale. So that can be a problem. So what we can do in this type of situation, bring all your inventory to Switzerland. We will set up for you an account at a free-trade zone. So the goods are imported exempt of VAT. It's basically when you put stock in transit. So it comes to Switzerland in transit.
Hold on a second. Are you telling our listeners there is an option to avoid paying the VAT deposit in advance?
Basically, yes, you can avoid it. Yeah.
Okay, wait a second. For all our listeners out there, for all the viewers, okay, Alex, I want you to break this down step by step, how US sellers can get their products into the European Union, into Europe, without having to pay an upfront VAT deposit.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, how? Give me the real details.
Okay, so we open an account at a free-trade zone where we give you the address where to send your inventory. And this is like if the goods arrived, but without crossing the border. So it's like a gray, not a gray zone, but a zone where there are no customs to pay and no VAT. So once the inventory arrives, then we can dispatch little by little to the marketplaces where you want to test your product. So of course, if you export to one of those countries, you will have to pay the VAT, but you can choose whether to pay like 5%, 10%, or 20% of your goods, and you don't have to pay everything in advance.
How does the seller decide which one to pick, or what percentage to pay?
They decide how much inventory they want to sell in one country, or alternatively, we can also do like not FBA, that the inventory is stored in the Swiss at this place, free trade zone, and then you do not FBA but FBM, where you fulfill one by one each item, and if the item the price is low, then sometimes you don't have to pay VAT at all.
Okay, let me see if I have this straight. Okay, if I'm a US seller and I want to start selling in Europe, okay, instead of having my products shipped to the UK or into France or Italy or Spain or Germany, I can have my products delivered into the free trade zone in Switzerland, and by doing that, avoid paying a VAT deposit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. Yes.
And once it's in Europe, once it's in Switzerland, right, then it could be dispersed through FBA warehouses or merchant fulfilled if people are doing it that way. And again, you're still not paying your VAT, at least not paying it in advance.
Yes, exactly. Unless, of course, you tell the free trade zone to dispatch, I don't know, a large quantity to France, then you will have to pay VAT on that particular inventory.
So if a domestic seller gets the products by going through Switzerland as opposed to any other country in Europe, and now they're in the European Union without paying the VAT deposit in advance, how do they then catch up on their taxes, and how much will they owe as they start to sell products? Let's say a US seller sells $100,000 worth of products. Now he has to pay his taxes. How does that work logistically?
Now, once he begins selling, he will have to pay VAT again. So this is like an intermediary phase that instead of sending everything to one place, he can first send it to Switzerland, then send, let's say, a part of the inventory to test the market and to check if it works or not. But because what might happen is that they pay in advance, I don't know, $20,000 VAT, and then they only sell half of the inventory. The problem, they already paid the VAT and it's difficult to get it back. So that's why we do this intermediary phase where the inventory can be stored in a Swiss warehouse. And then either they send part of it to France or UK or Spain, either they do fulfilled by merchant. But this gives more control over the cash flow and over the VAT they would have to pay.
If this can be done, it allows then sellers to pay their taxes with their cash flow. A lot of sellers find it to be cost prohibitive to get into Europe, so they're afraid of paying the VAT deposit. So if this is a way around that, they can then pay it out of the profits of their sales or out of their cash flow. That makes it a lot easier for US sellers. I keep saying domestic, for US sellers to enter into other markets and get some diversity in their businesses, which I think is absolutely vital. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. So I think that's really, really vital information. What about sellers who are now importing their products, they're having them manufactured in China, private label sellers, and getting products from China, into Europe to sell to the European marketplaces?
Yeah, so we can use exactly the same system. However, yeah, it's exactly the same. So it can arrive to Switzerland tax-free.
Would you?
And then, depending where you export, then you will have to pay something. But here again, we can play on the inventory and to manage cash flow so that it's better for the seller.
Is it any more difficult to get products brought in from a US seller, have their products delivered straight from China into Switzerland than it is from any place else? Like any extra tariffs? Tariffs are big news here in the United States. We're in this trade war with China. What about products that are manufactured in China being brought in, at the request of a US seller?
Yeah, so if I'm not making any mistake, if you import to this free trade zone, you won't have to pay any taxes. It's only when you import it to Switzerland or to another European country where you have to pay all the Chinese or the import taxes. But again, if it arrives to this zone, there is no taxes to pay.
Are you anticipating any change to that? Like, is there any movement in Switzerland or in anywhere in Europe where they're going to get involved in a trade war like our president is doing? He's putting
no, not at all. Switzerland has a very good relationship with China. We just signed recently another agreement which puts the tariffs to a very low rate, and lots of products are exempt of any tax from China. But of course, we have to check on a case by case basis.
But it certainly seems the benefits of setting up a Swiss company and doing the importation into Europe through Switzerland, that you get the free trade, and there is no problem that Switzerland is having with China or China is having with Switzerland.
Yes, exactly. And you don't even need to have a Swiss company. Even if you have a foreign company, you can still import goods to Switzerland. And we manage for you to have a Swiss registered company receiving the goods for you. And what's interesting that in this free trade zone, we can see we can go there, we can check the goods, we can open the boxes, and you can do that without having to pay any taxes. So it can be interesting.
You took the words right out of my mouth in a bit. because I always recommend that sellers, if they're having products sourced in China, they have to visit China. They have to go visit the factory. They have to develop a relationship with the factory owner and keep their eyes on the quality control. And if they're doing business in Europe, I would recommend they also, especially if they're using warehouses in Europe, that they come in and pay a visit and see for themselves how things are being operated. So let's say a US seller is having products imported directly from China into Switzerland. And now that US seller wants to come and see the warehouses, in Switzerland or whatever business is going on. Are there any visa requirements for US citizens coming into Switzerland?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, Swiss citizens don't need a visa to go to the US, so the other way around should be true.
Are there any issues regarding which particular ports to use within Switzerland, or which airports, or a mechanism for getting the products in that you would recommend?
Well, we are located in Geneva, so I work from here. So we have this free trade zone here in Geneva. It's kind of funny because it's called like the same place where ships go. Like this free trade, like a port. But in Switzerland we don't have sea, but we still have this zone which is without any customs, and as if you go to Rotterdam and there are all these ships coming. It's the same. Law, same situation, same.
All right, so
it's very close to it. So it's 15 minutes from my offices by public transportation, and we already have like an agreement with them. So it's very easy for us to get Amazon sellers inventory shipped here, and again, so we can either the people from the warehouse can do all the packing, like the prep work, so they can also put the Amazon stickers on it. They're used to it. We already briefed them. We taught them everything. And of course, if you want us to go there to check and that everything is fine, we can also, I mean, me and my team can also do it. So we can also have this personal approach. You don't have to hire like big companies where you don't know to who you have to speak to. So if you work with us, I can personally help you with that.
Okay, so it seems like there are really, two significant takeaways from this particular webinar. Number one, Alex has he's developed a way of getting your products into Europe and hopefully avoiding paying the VAT deposit by going through Switzerland, particularly Geneva, for this free trade zone, which I think is tremendous. Number two, Alex has a service where you can evaluate your business to see, whether you should or should not have a European entity, and if you should, whether it should be in the UK or Switzerland or someplace else. Now, before we did this webinar, I conference everything with my team. We have 30 people working together in a collaborative environment. Every plan of action we write is a team effort here. Every seller we get reinstated is a team effort. I also use the people that work here for their ideas. And I told them I was going to be doing a webinar with another lawyer, right? Mm. And they asked why. Like, why would you talk about another lawyer? Now, Alex's services complement what we do, okay? I can't set up a company for you in Switzerland, and I can't set up a company for you in the UK, but Alex can. And we really can evaluate whether you should or should not, or what country you should. So if you want to know whether or not a European entity is the right thing for you, I'm happy to share the information. eCommercelawyer.com. Reach out to Alex and he will do the evaluation for you, and then help you if you decide to follow his advice to open an entity, whether it's in UK, Europe, any place, or Switzerland. And I think those are the two takeaways. One, you can get your products in without paying a deposit, which means you can use your cash flow to pay the taxes. And number two, whether you do or do not, or whether you should or should not have a European entity. Alex, is there anything else you think sellers should know about the services that you can provide, to them to enter into the European marketplaces?
No, I think you summarized it very well. So as you said, you can also assist in a company creation. And if, for example, you are more than one partners in the company, we can also help you to set up all the agreements between you as partners. And we can also help you to set up a Swiss bank account for your company. This is something which can be challenging for foreign people, but if you create a company in Switzerland with us, we can help you. with that. And I think you summarized it quite well. So don't hesitate to visit our website, and we can also do like analysis of your situation. So all the tax questions, VAT questions, and logistics question, or simple things as company creation. And of course, if you would like to become a Swiss resident, we can also help you with that.
All right. Okay. As we wrap it up, often vendors will use this opportunity to promote themselves and their services. I'm not going to do that. Everyone who sells on Amazon usually also buys on Amazon or shops on Amazon. Amazon has a great program called Amazon Smiles, and through that program, you can pick any charity you want, and Amazon will then send a small portion of your purchase, the purchase price, to that charity and donate it. I always recommend the Ty Lewis Campbell Foundation, but absolutely use Amazon Smiles. And if you don't have a charity in mind, Ty Lewis Campbell. Ty was a little boy who had brain cancer. He was diagnosed at 3, and he lost his battle right before his 5th birthday. This foundation was started by his mom and his dad, and they raised money to find better treatments and hopefully a cure for pediatric cancers. So if you're shopping on Amazon, please use Amazon Smiles, and please choose the Ty Lewis Campbell Foundation. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. If anybody needs more information, eCommerceLawyer.com, or contact me, CJ at AmazonSellersLawyer.com, and we can put you guys in touch. And it's really important. This is a way of getting into Europe with basically no money down for sellers. Alex, thanks again for joining us. I think this was a great webinar, very informative. Thanks again.
Thank you, CJ. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.